It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo Larry Show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo Larry Show.
Hello, I'm Leo.
And I'm Larry.
And we're back. Yes, to the Leo and Larry show. And Larry, there's so much going on, but one reoccurring thing in the media and in your publisher, one thing that just seems to happen over and over again till people are kind of, wow, they're becoming numb to it. And that is all of the shootings, the gun violence in America, whether we're talking about another Black being shot by a police officer 60 times or more, or we're talking about mass shootings. And, everyone is across the country, people are asking themselves and each other, what's going on in this country? And is there anything that we can do?
And I understand briefly, I understand the Second Amendment, but I don't understand the need for assault weapons. And I think the solution, partially a solution to this problem, is going to be the banning of assault weapons in some form or fashion. That's not something that conservatives want to hear. That's not something that Democrats want to hear. That's not something the moderates want to hear. But the reality of it is that, like you said, almost every day, at least every week, we're getting these mass shootings. And like I said, you're right. We are becoming desensitized to them. We are. It's like I was in Washington when the shooting happened over the 4th of July weekend, and I remember seeing something that said something about a shooting in Philadelphia at the same time. And my goddaughter, fortunately, had just got back to Washington from Philadelphia, and I was so glad that she was not there and she was not caught up in that. I can't see, Leo, how you can look at the carnage and you can look at the death of 19 kids who were in elementary school and not see the reality of that in any sense and say, well, we don't need to ban guns, we need to ban shooters, or we need to do more for mental health, or we need to do it. All of those things are well and good, and all those things are including the necessary. But the reality of the situation is the fact that that person, the question I asked in the Texas shooting especially is, how do you at 18 find $5,000 to buy an assault weapon, to buy 2 assault weapons, and additional ammunition? So where is this money coming from? We know that the gun dealers are selling the guns, but as I said to the police chief here in Florence, and I said to the sheriff in Florence as well, the challenge here is somebody is selling guns on the street, and I would like to think that law enforcement would be trying to find out who that person is and persons are, and basically try to deal with that situation from that particular standpoint. These young kids, the other problem we have in terms of personal shootings, where you've got these community shootings in West Florence and East Florence, I think over on Maxwell Street yesterday, is basically these young kids have no sense of value of what a human life is worth.
Absolutely.
At 70 years old, at 68 years old, you and I understand what the value of a human life is. They don't. They kind of think it's like television. I shoot them and they come back alive after the show goes.
Right.
I don't understand the logic or the rationale, or that this makes me a stronger or a better man because I killed somebody. I can honestly say that I've not knowingly killed anybody in my life, and I think I'm just as good a man as anybody.
And what I don't understand is the Second Amendment. Why are we parsing? Why are we only taking a portion of that amendment when we talk about gun rights? So, it actually reads, I'm going to paraphrase it, but in its entirety, it says the government will not restrict the citizens' rights to bear arms and to have a well-regulated militia. So, did the founding fathers mean that citizens had to bear arms as a part of a well-regulated militia? We don't have that conversation. We
Well,
just look at the part that says we have a right to bear arms.
because
Because we have a well-regulated militia. It's called the National Guard.
but what you got is you got the National Rifle Association
Mhm.
Controlling the conversation. And so you're not going to have a real conversation on gun violence in America until those who are financed and funded by the National Rifle Association are comfortable with the fact that they can still gain the revenue. And these are mostly elected officials in South Carolina and across the nation who basically base the fact that I'd rather be with the National Rifle Association than be morally right.
Mhm.
Because this is a moral issue. And so how can you say I can watch 19 kids die and I'm not going to really do anything but put a Band-Aid on that
Mhm.
because I don't want to take a risk of losing my funding or my contributions from the National Rifle Association. Now, that is almost the ultimate level of selfishness, isn't it?
Yeah, or triggering opposition from them, where if I'm silent or neutral, I may not get as much opposition from them. And the thing is, I agree with you totally. And we had a ceasefire stakeholders group in Florence. We met yesterday, and so and I made the statement then that we're looking at the shortcomings and we're looking at the symptoms. So we're looking at the music, we're looking at drugs, we're looking at gangs, we're looking at video games, we're looking at single moms who are not home, the father's not present, no male. We're looking at all these pieces, but I agree with you 100% that the problem really is that folks don't value their lives, they don't value other lives, they don't have a moral compass, and we can see that. And the week that the shooting took place in the supermarket in Buffalo, New York, there were over 800 gun incidents, shootings in America that week. And then the first day of the next week, which was Sunday, you had an Asian person do the shooting in California. So that means you had a white supremacist going to a supermarket in Buffalo on Saturday. On Sunday, an Asian man goes to an Asian church. And then you have all these other shootings from domestic violence, gang, drugs, all kinds of ridiculous disputes that end in death, etc. Which tells me, as you stated, that the real problem is the decline in morality and the valuation of life. And also, I think that people have become so frustrated, disillusioned, and also that they have no hope. They have no faith. They don't see our institutions, educational system, Congress, the presidency, the church, political parties, leaders. They don't have faith in them that they will change their lives and give values to their lives. I think that lies at the heart of all of this.
How can they, Theo,
Mm.
when the Democratic Party and Democratic leadership, all the way up to President Biden, is celebrating this new legislation, calling it gun control legislation?
Mhm.
which is the biggest myth on the planet.
Mental health.
It is nowhere near gun control legislation. Gun control legislation is to stop the guns from flowing into our community. This is basically a situation where you had people say we're gonna try to control the mental health of people, but you didn't even require the gun seller to report to the local law enforcement who just bought this automatic weapon, and to make sure that law enforcement visit that person and see if that person has the mental fitness to be able to have that gun. If that person is an 18-year-old, what am I going to do for a gun that shoots 60 rounds a minute? Am I going out hunting elephants? I mean, what? Under what circumstance do I need a gun that shoots 60 rounds other than when I'm in a war?
And what percentage of people who have mental health problems actually, have had that condition documented? We have a whole lot of people walking around with us every day who have mental health issues, but they have no paperwork, they have no documentation on. They've never been to see a therapist. They've never been ordered by the court to seek psychological counseling or something like that. So that law doesn't even address people who have it only covers people who have mental health, documented mental health issues. And then what kind of mental health issues do you have to have in order not to have a firearm? Now you got to go into, do I have mental health issues because I have a phobia about heights, or because I'm schizophrenic, or it just was a meaningless piece of legislation that was just a Band-Aid. So everyone could pretend that they've addressed. And we've seen the same thing locally. We get task force, we get all of these things, but obviously they are not working. They're not making a difference. Instead of us seeing a reduction in gun violence, we're seeing an increase in gun violence. And that's why we believe in things like having ceasefire zones. And even if that means that people who break the law have to serve more time, what's more important? Because I'll tell you honestly, there's some people who should be out here walking among us.
I agree with you 1,000%. And I think the challenge basically that we have here is, after about the last few rounds of shootings here locally, I started to think like Rudy Giuliani, and I started to say, and I called Scotty Davis over the city, and I said, man, I'm one step away from stopping frisk. I said, because I have children in the school system, and I think that precautions that could be taken in Florence, especially, and in the PD as a region as a whole, is that we can start to make better use of metal detectors. We can start. We can control who's entering certain buildings and how they're entering, and whether they have weapons. And like I said, I'm not even at this point. I'm not even against stop and frisk, because I believe at this particular point that drastic situations require drastic measures. And this is a drastic situation. Like you said, the numbers are not going down, they're going up.
Right.
And I think, not to make race an issue in this situation, but because most of the shootings are happening in East Florence, and they're happening in Darlington, and they're happening in Lake City, and they're happening in Marion, but they're all happening in poor, Black, underserved communities. There is not a legitimate concern or a legitimate effort to push out. And, I talked with Duke Energy about 2 months ago, and I said, one of the things that would help in some of these communities if we had better lighting. And the representative for Duke Energy told me at that particular point, you asked the mayor to request additional lighting, and I promise you, we'll give it to them.
They'll put it in.
Huh?
They'll put it in.
So the problem basically is we've got to take the measures and take the steps as a community. And it goes back to, if you see something, say something. You know who's doing the shootings in your community. Almost immediately after somebody does a shooting in Florence, that's one of the most interesting things, or in the PD as a whole. One of the most interesting things is they get arrested within 2 days.
Right.
We know who's doing the shootings. So the question is, if we know who's doing the shootings, why are we not able to stop not those shootings that they've done, but at least use those profiles to look at how we protect our community?
Right, absolutely. And see, one of the other problems, because you mentioned metal detectors in schools. You know, when we went to the Florence City Council, we asked them to do 2 things. Take the lead in helping to establish ceasefire zones, which I'm glad to say we now have over 100 businesses in Florence that have ceasefire decals on their doors and windows. But we also asked them to take the lead in forming a stakeholder group. I don't mean a task force with the city and law enforcement. I mean a true stakeholder group where you have neighborhood associations, you have representatives from churches, you have someone from the school district on there, so that we're coming up with solutions. You know, it's not one solution, it's not one approach, it's several. But part of the problem is that we have all of these different entities that are taking different approaches, if they're taking any approach at all, to protect our congregants, our children in schools, our neighbors, residents, and et cetera, our children, et cetera. And so there needs to be an organized effort to pull in all factors, businesses, everyone together to come up with a comprehensive plan on how do we deal with gun violence. And it has to be non-political. We can't have this political faction, that political faction, this political leader, this elected official who wants to lead it, but they don't want to work with others. You see what I'm saying? And because it's impacting all of us, it takes all of us to come up with a solution. And it's the glorification of violence also that contributes towards this. And you know, I'm going to say the Breakfast Club. I listen to the Breakfast Club, and you have other things with Will Smith and Chris Rock, that even on a celebrity level, when we look at people who young people may be aspiring to become and reach their level, there's a thing going on now from reality TV all the way up to our celebrities, where these open disputes and battles and disagreement, people look at them as if it's entertainment and it's something good. They should be setting an example, rather an example for how to deal with conflict in a meaningful, productive way, rather than having these out and out bad. Look what was going on with Monique and DL Hughley and Steve Harvey, and you know what I mean? It's just this thing
Well,
where we
I think
glorify conflict and violence.
I think we place too much value on celebrities, in the sense that I don't want my grandchildren growing up believing that Will Smith is their role model, or that Kanye West is their role model, or some other idiot out there who says stupid things to sell tickets, to sell product, because they have to understand that that's what these people are doing. They're out there selling product, whether it's Afro Sheen, or whether it's clothes, or whether it's shoes, or whether it's a lifestyle in general. Cars and toilet paper, they're selling it. Most in our industry we call it selling soap. But the reality of it basically is, Barkley and some of those guys have said, I don't want to be a role model. Well, that's all well and good, but you present yourself on television and you present yourself in the media as somebody who these kids should admire because you're making a lot of money and you're living a great life. And these kids have got to understand the cost of that life. You don't know what Barkley or Will Smith or Chris Rock or anybody else did to get, and what they had to sacrifice to get to where they are. Whether they had to sacrifice their sexuality or whether they had to sacrifice anything else to get where they are. So, when you get a person who's willing to pay any price for fame, that's not a person you want your child to follow. That's not a person who has a moral compass that you want to identify with yourself. And so the challenge basically is, how do you get our kids to understand that this is all theater, that this is all a 60-second or 30-second spot, that this is about, half of the stuff that these guys claim they own, they don't own. And they might have a house and they might have great cars and they might have, fantastic lives, but what cost did that come? What did I have to pay to get there? Do I have to sell out my people? Do I have to sell my own soul personally? Do I have to sell out my sexuality? What is it that I have to do? Because if I'm going to make you famous and I'm going to make you rich, there's going to be a cost.
There's a cost.
There's nothing free. So now, what did these people pay to get to that particular point? Was it because they were strictly just talented? There are a lot of talented people out there. So how do you differentiate between one group of one person and another in a talent pool?
Right.
I mean, there are actresses out there that and I know that are extremely talented that never got near the Oscar nomination, or never got near the Emmy nomination, because the Grammy or whatever. But in your heart that they are great actors.
Shout out to Anthony Smith, Grammy nominee. Love the way that sister sings. Don't know why she didn't win the Grammy.
Well, and it's really, really interesting. I stopped watching those shows a few years ago because I just thought I had better things to do with my time. And the reality of that situation is that you talk about Lawrence Fishburne. Man, Lawrence Fishburne is one of the greatest actors of all time. There is absolutely no doubt about that. But I think Lawrence Fishburne might have an Emmy, but he absolutely doesn't have an Oscar.
Was he ever even nominated for?
Well, I don't even believe he has been nominated. But the whole point basically is that Lawrence Fishburne can act circles around Will Smith. And Kanye West and half of those boys that call themselves at the top. He can act circles around. So it's a situation where you're talking about people who are not getting the consideration because they're not with the right management team. They're not felt like the in stars. I saw, and I'm trying to remember the name of them, Fences. I don't know if you've seen Fences. With Denzel. With Denzel and what's the name? Who claims a free president from South Carolina. What's the sister name?
I know you're talking about. Yeah.
When she's in that backyard and she has that scene and he telling her that he got another woman on the side, she crying and snot coming out of her nose. I have never in my life seen a scene that dramatic.
That was real.
That was as real as it gets. I was like, whoa. And that didn't receive an Oscar?
No.
Wasn't
even nominated.
That's my point. And that didn't receive an Oscar?
Right.
I give up on Oscars right then. Because
there was a shift. So how did we go from Dr. King being someone that people admired, right? And who was nonviolent to the cultural violence that we have today. You know, how did we go from, at one time I saw with a cousin of mine, right, in Queens, New York, right? Sal Willis, shout out to you, Sal. Child, we were talking about how there was a time in this country that if you had a huge amount of money, people immediately question how you got that money. They call rich people robber barons. They call them slumlords. You know what I mean? And you had to prove that you didn't, that you didn't do what that saying is that behind every great fortune is a great crime, and you had to prove that. Otherwise, people just assume that you did some really underhanded stuff to get to where you are. But we had this shift where it's all about what you have, you know, and we glorify people for what they have. You could be a rapper, you could be an entrepreneur, you could be a drug dealer. But if you have material success, if you have wealth, then we actually lift you up as a model. People admire you, and we no longer admire people for what they contribute to society in terms of service and in terms of love and making the planet a better place. And that has been a huge shift that we've had culturally, with art, with theater, with movies, with all of those things.
Now we're living, unfortunately, in a win at any cost
Mhm.
society. And it doesn't matter how many lies you tell, how many people you treat. I saw earlier today, as a matter of fact, Starbucks is closing down 16 stores, and they're closing down 16 stores. And the unions involved in the argument say you're closing down the stores because you don't want to have us unionize Starbucks. And
I heard about it.
so you're threatening us
Mhm.
that if we continue to do this, we'll basically, what you're gonna do is you're gonna start closing down stores instead of allowing the union into the Starbucks.
Mhm.
And that's where we are. The state of South Carolina has a committee that watches the union development in the state of South Carolina and reports to the state. I'm a member of the State Chamber of Commerce, and reports to the State Chamber of Commerce and to the members of the State Chamber of Commerce what union activity is available in the state of South Carolina and who's trying to unionize in the state of South Carolina. And I'm not for or anti.
Mhm.
My position is, as a business owner, is that you get the best deal you can get.
Mhm.
As a worker, you need to get the best deal you can get, whether that's through a union or whether that's through your independent negotiations. But at the end of the day, we have come to be a society where we don't care, as long as the boy at the top is making money. He don't care who isn't making money.
Absolutely.
And she don't care who isn't making money. And so what you've got is a problem where there is no security. Yeah, I can have a great job today and I can have a great opportunity today, but tomorrow that opportunity can be snatched away from me. And I think the challenge basically is in our community as it relates to blacks, and especially the blacks killing each other. It comes back to the fact that, and it goes back to what I said about the value system. The value system is absolutely off keel. And as long as we're killing each other and not going out into the mass community and killing other people, there seems to be, and I hope that's not the case, but there seems to be no motivation to try to stop it. When you're killing people in East Florence and West Florence or Darlington or Clarksville or Marion or Lake City or Kingstree or someplace, and those people happen to all be black, 99% of them are all black. What is your motivation for basically saying, okay, we need to stop this? Until you have a situation like you had in Columbia, where you had an incident in the mall where the person wasn't in the mall to shoot anybody. From my understanding, the person was in the mall shopping and ran across a rival person in the mall. And there was a gun exchange. And I, from the day one, my question has always been, even if I carried a gun, why would I carry it into the mall?
Right.
There's no gun repair shop in the mall.
That's why we say
so why would I carry? Why would I
say ceasefire zone?
But and that's the point. You carry it. It's just like when you talked about a minute ago about metal detectors in schools. I advocate movies. I advocate bowling alleys. I advocate any place where there's a large crowd of people who are actually going to be gathering in the PD, that we have metal detectors to basically check people going into these places, because people do stupid things. You know, and if you're willing to take your gun into the movies, you know, you're willing to use it. I say to my sons, and I've said to my sons since their birth, look, here's the thing. If you don't have it, you can't use it. So if you don't have a gun in your possession, you can't use it. My son was talking to me, and he was in the middle of a conversation. He was right smack in the middle of the conversation, my oldest son. And he said, Dad, and this guy had a gun, and we were talking about such and such and such. And he just went on with the conversation. And I said, hold up. Did you say the guy had a gun? He said, yeah. He said, yeah. I said, here's my suggestion to you, my strong suggestion to you, that if you with somebody and you realize that they have a gun, if you don't have a cell phone, you run to the nearest phone and you call me, and I'm coming to get you from wherever you are. And I said, because because there's no need. We don't live in a society where we need to carry a gun. Even business owners who carry resources and monetary and got to make bank deposits in the middle of the night. We don't carry weapons. So my point basically is, what I need a gun for now, I may need a gun in my house, because if you come in my house, that's my domain. And I'm going to protect my house by whatever means necessary. So now, but I don't need a gun when I'm in the street. I don't need a gun when I go to the club, to the movies, to the bowling alley. What do I need a gun for?
Well, I think a lot of that comes from, like I said, and again, the symptoms, you know, seeing things on TV and the movies and that sort of thing. And the reality around you, if you live in the North Florence or West Florence, East Florence, part of West Florence, the reality is that you see that there are guns out there. And, you know, part of the reason why the guns are out there, and again, we know this is not the root of the problem, gangs, drug dealing, illegal activities. And you look around, and this is something that I've had some conversations with elected officials. When you go into predominantly Black neighborhoods, residential neighborhoods, and you look at the zoning, most of the zoning is for single and multi-family usage. Very, very little commercial or mixed usage zoning. And so you can go into a majority white community, and you can go down, you know, Coy Street, Pine Street, certain streets, and you'll see houses. This house is it's a real estate company. Another one is a lawyer's office. You know, you even have some buildings that are dentists and doctors' offices. You don't see that in low income, predominantly Black communities. And because you don't see that, they don't have role models. They don't, how many role models, if you go into North Florence, how many successful businesses outside of the Larry Ellerbe's, how many successful businesses do you see as a kid walking down the street where you can say, I want to emulate this person. I want to be like that person. Oh, here's someone who looks like me, who has a successful business. Maybe I can do the same thing. That has a lot to do with it as well. And so the people that they're looking at that have the bling, that have the I call it urban streetwear, that kind of stuff, are oftentimes the people who are involved in illegal activities. And because they're involved in illegal activities, they have guns. And so some people who feel they need guns to protect themselves from them. Others think that that too is part of a status symbol, you know what I mean? And so, you know, if we're going to deal with situations in our community that increase the probability of gun violence, then we have to deal with that by opening up opportunities for young people where they have other options besides being involved in illegal and illicit activities, that they can actually see role models. You know, I know we looked at a piece of property in North Florence that we wanted to get because we were thinking about doing a commercial or business, some kind of business there. And they told me no, only zone for multi-use and single family residents. And I was like, well, right across the street, you have a commercial business in front of it. I look to my right. There's a commercial, it's zone commercial. So that is something we need to work on. But in order to do that, we need part of our leadership to look at things differently. I had elected officials who told me, well, we don't want to push this ceasefire zone thing too much. And we don't want people to get extra time for gun violence and ceasefire zones because they may use this as an excuse to lock up more Black people. Well, if you're firing a gun in an area where innocent people are, maybe you need to get more time, or also looking at the fact that, I spoke with some folks who in positions to make decisions, and I said we need to have more commercially zoned property areas in our community. And you know what this person told me, Larry? No, we don't want that because if we have more businesses in our communities, that means there'll be more robberies. And I was like, come on, we got cameras, we got alarm systems.
That's about as limited thinking as you can possibly get. The challenge basically is that you're right as you think about it. When you look at East Florence and you look at West Florence, Northwest Florence, you don't see the role models that we once saw. Even when I came here, Mr. Bird closed down 10 years ago with Curtis Matthews, and we used to see him on television all the time, and his grandchildren on television all the time, talking about the products and they were selling. And being a positive contributor to the community. We now have people out there, and I one of the questions I got to ask you is, did you ask them to refer you to the zoning board? Because there is no such thing as a zone that can't be changed.
Right, absolutely.
And so why
that's what I told them.
If they said the zone was not zone commercial or was not zone residential or whatever you needed it for it to be, then you say, okay, well, let's go to the zoning board and let's get it changed to be what I need for it to be, because I'm going to build something that's going to be productive for the city and for the people who live in this community
and provide jobs.
That's what I'm saying. It's going to be productive.
But what happened was the person we were looking to purchase the property from changed their minds. But that's still, that doesn't take away from the fact that we need to have more commercially zoned businesses in low income communities, because how else do you create wealth? You create wealth only by a few ways: the accumulation of property, having a business, being better trained or educated so you can get jobs that pay more, and last but not least, the American dream, home ownership. And you need a mixture of all of those things, So, that's one of the challenges too, that, if you see some development going on here, they're doing infills with houses. So you can have one or two lots and put a couple of new houses that look really great there. I'll look at the house and I'll say, this is wonderful. But if I have children, I'm looking at the rest of the neighborhood and I'm like, I'm not moving here. I'm not gonna have my children in this element. So it's not even about, we have several lots in this city where infilling in terms of housing can take place, but we don't need infilling. We need neighborhood revitalization. If you have an area that's deteriorating, then we should have 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks on both sides of the street where if you change the lightings and if the owners don't want to move, if they don't want to sell, then let's find some resources where they can repair their houses and they can and do something with the front of their home. We were able to find lots and lots of money to renovate the buildings downtown for downtown revitalization. Why can't we do the same for our communities?
Well, the challenge basically is the desire doesn't seem to be there, unfortunately. But more than the desire to be there, ask yourself something, Leon. When you talk about East Florence and North Florence, and the amount of Black folk that live in East Florence and North Florence, they got one chicken place over there.
Mm-hmm.
One.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go down, when you go down
And the
Evans Street,
Chinese restaurant.
but you go down Evans Street and you get down to Zaxby's, Popeyes, and even the McDonald's and everybody else that sells chicken. Now, it's like, okay, Fred Carter said to me a few months ago, as a matter of fact, in the conversation, we don't have a legitimate bank in these communities. Everybody who banks in these communities has got to go to West Florence to bank.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have what is legitimately a name brand grocery store.
Mm-hmm.
Even though Tim has done everything he can to build the situation, save a lot that he has. Having a grocery store that I'm used to shopping at, because I'm not used to shopping at off-brand grocery store. I'm used to shopping at a grocery store where there's a Food Lion or Walmart or Kroger or somebody like that, where they sell national products.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I'm not going to change my shopping habits because somebody creates a store that has brands that have no names that I even know or understand. One of the things that African Americans are very brand loyal. We're very brand loyal. And so the challenge basically that you haven't had any investment. And one of the things I can't see and I can't understand from the city of Florence in this situation is they paid over $250,000, if not $1 million, to have a company to come in and give them guidance on this. And they told them, you need a Pizza Hut or a pizza restaurant in North Florence. You need certain restaurants. 18,000 people a day frequent McLeod. 18,000 people a day frequent McLeod. So if you can build around, that's the only presence that's in East Florence. And if you can build around that presence, just the doctors and the lawyers and I mean the doctors and the nurses and the other professionals that work at the hospital, there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 6,000 of them that work at the hospital every day. So the challenge basically is, what is the community, not the hospital, what's the community doing? I know the hospital owns most of the land around the hospital, but what is the community doing to develop the land around the hospital and to use that as a springboard for developing the community? You've got the investment there. All you've got to do is go across the street for the investment and reinvest your money. From what I understand, Norman Gamble, Pastor Reverend Norman Gamble is doing exceptionally well with his she is called Chirac Center.
Chirac,
the Chirac Center over there. That they're doing well in terms of booking people and doing things in terms of doing positive things for the community in their community center. The challenge basically is that we need one, for the churches to stand up like he stood up and created that particular environment,
Mhm.
but we need others in the community to follow suit and do the same thing. And what are my chances of having a building in North Florence? Like you said, of an office in North Florence. What are your chances of having an office in North Florence? And I would think that the city would not only be supporting our efforts to do things like that, but they would say, okay, those guys have been in business for 40 years. Not only do I support their efforts, but I'm going to finance their efforts.
Right. And looking at how do you balance things so you have equity. So we know that there are fewer Black businesses that are established and successful like yours has been for the last 40 years and continues to be. We know that both Congressman Jim Clyburn and Senator Tim Scott had COVID money allocated to the state of South Carolina, overseen by DESA, so that we could help businesses. Because during COVID, 41% of African American businesses that shut down said they're not going to reopen. 36% of Latinx businesses that closed down during COVID said they wouldn't reopen, and 23% of Asian businesses that closed down during COVID said that they won't be reopening. And you notice that since COVID, that we have had a great increase in food trucks. And a lot of those people who have food trucks are people who had retail restaurants or wanted to have one, and because of COVID and them losing money to save their businesses, they went to food truck. So we know that there is a lack of businesses for people of color. We know that they are struggling, particularly after the pandemic. We know that there used to be what I call a people of color business district downtown, and now there's no Black business district or any other business district for people of color. And those are things that have to be essential, because you can't lift up one part of a community or a city while the other half of the boat is going down in the water.
I would even push you further in that conversation to say that you can't lift up 2 blocks and need the 3rd block and develop.
Right.
And that's what they've done with Dargan Street. They lifted up 2-3 blocks, and they did everything they could in those 3 blocks. But when you get across that railroad track,
yeah, across the tracks,
you're back in the hood.
Across the tracks,
and nothing, and no resources have been developed in that particular community. And I think Trinity owns most of the buildings on the left side of the street, going down the street. And I think they made several proposals to them to invest in those buildings, because those buildings are very, very old, and most of them probably need to be pushed down. And I think you could put a nice plaza right there, Black plaza right there, with Black businesses and dry cleaners and things like that. In that particular block, you got Thompson's across the street with the barber shop, and they're doing the things. Bill Hawkins actually owns the building next to Thompson, and it's basically been planning to make that a memorial chapel for the last few years, trying to find the dollars to do that in terms of getting some money to clear up the asbestos in the building. So there are some people who want to move those last 2 blocks, and see that when you get to that block, Hope Health has bought the rest of that block, and Hope Health is making sure that they own all of that block. And so the challenge basically for us is, where do they think that we want to? I think they want to make a flea market business. And I think they want to. I did this. I was looking for some incense, I think a few weeks ago, or a couple of months ago. And I was out one Saturday afternoon, and I said, let me go by the flea market. I haven't been by the flea market in years. And I said, let me stick my head in the flea market. And there was a bustling Black business culture there. Now, how much of that money is the city getting? Because that guy's charging $20 or $30 or whatever amount of money he's charging for a booth. But as the city coming in and accessing these sales, these people who are making sales out there, because there's about a 4 block square of people out there that are making tremendous money, and that has become, unfortunately, that has become the black business mecca of Florence.
Right.
If you want to sell something, go take it to the flea market.
Right. Think about that. That is where the black business district is now. But I was also thinking about what you said about, looking at North Florence over where Trinity is, and not only putting a shopping plaza in, that would be a great place for a supermarket. That would be a great place for a theater. And I'm not just talking about a movie theater. I'm talking about a theater where we can have dance, and you know what I mean? That would be where we could have black culture. And surely there's enough people on that side of the tracks and people on the other side of the tracks. And McLeod is close enough where I'm sure people would want to go shop there, eat there, etc. And so it's not that there's a lack of ideas about what can be developed on that side of town. The will is not there. The will to do community the community development is not there. And the sad thing is that all of our elected officials, and many of them that are on there, are representing these districts, or they're at large members of the council that are supposed to be representing these districts. But every time they talk about economic development or what should be done, never anything said except for one thing. And Claude Anderson, who wrote Powernomics and a host of other books, I always remember what he said. Their idea for progress in black low-income communities is to give us a ball, a basketball, a tennis ball, a baseball, a football, and said what they are actually investing in is sweat equity. You dance a lot, you sing a lot, you play sports, you sweat a lot, but you know what? When you go to the store and you have your food and other items, clothes, etc., you cannot scan sweat. Sweat will pay for nothing. And so when we look at our communities, and you said this previously, you look at what are they giving us? It's recreation, and that's principally it. But it's not anything where you're actually investing in people, where people can gain more assets and they can create wealth in their community.
Well, Florence has and continues to have the illusion that they can become a sports marketing community. And so they're investing a lot of their resources in sports marketing. And that's interesting. I was watching the news, one of the newscasts a couple of days ago here in Florence, and Myrtle Beach had 300 softball teams down for a softball tournament in the last month.
300.
300. As a matter of fact, at the time of the news report, there was still 100 left. And this includes families and players and everything. And they were talking about the economic impact of it. And Charlotte has a hub that they use as a sports marketing market. Atlanta has a district that they use as a sports marketing district around the old what was the Omni, the Omni Hotel and CNN and all of that.
Right.
And they're using these things. And I think Florence thinks that they can compete in the small market, the 25 teams or less market for tournaments. And I don't know how successful Freedom Florence has been over the last few years, and I don't know how successful the because of the pandemic. I don't know how successful the Florence Center has been over the last few years.
Look at the budget; it'll tell you.
Well, I see the budget. I'm on the accommodations committee. I actually see their budget. But the problem basically is when you look at who they're bringing in. I got a news release from the Chamber of Commerce a couple of days ago, and it said they were bringing in this Country Western group. And then at the Florence Center, and I was like, and that is important to me. Why? And so the challenge basically is that who's making the determination as to how we move Florence, Florence, and whether it's Florence or Darlington or Marion or King Street or Lake City or whatever, how we move these communities forward. I think our access to I-95 and I-20
is a plus.
Is the greatest plus for the community. And because of that, we've been able to get the inland port over in Dillon. But the reality of the situation there, we've got probably 2 to 3 million people a year that are traveling through Florence, headed to Myrtle Beach or headed to points elsewhere. And I'm not talking about the people on 95 and 20. I'm talking about the people who happen to come almost directly through Florence to go to Myrtle Beach. What are we doing to stop those people in Florence?
That's what I was getting ready to say.
What are we doing to figure out a way to stop those people in Florence? And what can we offer those people that will say, okay, we need to stay the night in Florence. We need to stay 1 night or 2 nights in Florence because Florence has all these great activities. That's
what I was going to say, Larry. I was going to say, you have to look at the totality. You built a sports complex. You revitalized downtown. But what else am I supposed to do? Well, if I come here, do you have great shopping at the mall? No. You know, do you have some recreational activities? Do you have, on a regular basis, great entertainment? Because let's remember that we're competing with Charleston, with its history, with the Battery. We're competing with Myrtle Beach, with the ocean and all of that. We're competing with Greenville and Columbia. So when people want to stop, they don't want to stop just to spend the night. They don't want to stop just to have a meal. If they're going to come here and stay for a few days and leave significant dollars, then they're going to want entertainment. They're going to want recreation. They're going to want to have great shopping. You know what I mean? A whole plethora of things. And we're not developing all of the city to attract anyone like that.
And for instance, you talk about shopping. Because Florence is not only adjacent to I-20 and I-95, but because it's the regional hub of the PD, it stands to reason to me that you'd be trying to attract an outlet mall, not a Louis Vuitton outlet mall, but an outlet mall, and an outlet mall that you could put right out there by 95, and
where they can see it.
Where they can see it, and where people can come off 95 and go shopping in that outlet mall, and the retail growth in this community would grow overnight, because now you have the people coming off the interstate who are coming through, who stopping at the outlet mall. But you also have the people from Bennettsville, Hartsville, Darlington, Marion, King Street, Lake City, Manning, all coming here to shop. And so it's worth the investment. It's worth the financial sacrifice to build that particular community. And I think that's one of the things that we left. Like you said, no, I don't want to come here and I can eat in Columbia, I can eat in Greenville, I can eat in Charleston.
I can eat Myrtle Beach and go I could eat in Myrtle Beach and go to the beach and go fishing and go shopping and see shows.
You know, my argument has always been about Myrtle Beach is that Myrtle Beach is when I go to seafood, when I really want seafood, I go to Murrells Inlet. I don't just go to Myrtle Beach, I go to Murrells Inlet. And that's where the quality seafood is. And so the challenge basically is that, you know, Elder Williams says this all the time, and we have to acknowledge his presence in this room, even though he's not physically in this room.
Yeah, shout out to Elder Williams.
But Elder Williams says this all the time, you know, people perish from lack of knowledge. One of the things I'm going to say, and we're in the last 2 minutes of the show, so I'm going to say this, and it may offend some people, but when you have people running a state, like the people who run the state of South Carolina, who in some cases I refer to them and others refer to them as children of a lesser God, and that you have average students who are not creative, who are not inventive, who are not investing. I've had and seen 10 franchisable restaurants in the state of South Carolina that never franchised because they didn't want to leave Columbia, they didn't want to leave Charleston, or they didn't want to leave Myrtle Beach. And they had franchise ability to go not just across the state of South Carolina, but across the nation. And the challenge, you know, Sandy's hot dog is one that you remember. And Russia's is another. That we have a golden opportunity. We have the resources, we have the people, we have everything it takes to build a nucleus to be a great state. But there are so many people, unfortunately for us, in the state of South Carolina who feel like maintaining the status quo is more important than growing.
They're already rich.
Yeah, exactly.
They already have power. And do you really want to create and grow competition? No, it's in your interest to maintain the status quo, even though you will never say that publicly.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and you don't have to look for it. Just look over in New Orleans. You know, they have two of the biggest races in America in New Orleans. And at the same time, they don't even have a hotel for the people to stay in.
No.
I mean, how much vision is that? You know, that you talk about lack of a vision. You don't have hotels for them to stay in. You don't have restaurants for them to eat in. So when they come to the PE, and they're the biggest race, one of the biggest races in America on Memorial Day or Labor Day, they gotta stay in Florence. They gotta stay at Myrtle Beach. They gotta stay in Hartsville.
They go all the way to Dillon.
They gotta stay in that. They gotta stay someplace other than where they're going to affect your bottom line. If I'm Darlington, if I don't build anything else in the next 5 years, I build a decent hotel.
One hotel.
At least one. I build at least one decent hotel with a restaurant.
Good. I was going to say with a restaurant.
And so the challenge basically is that we're in our last minute, Leo, and I think you need to kind of give them how to contact us and how they can move forward in terms of communicating with us about their issues and their concerns and how we can address those on the show.
Sure. So you can reach me, Leo Woodbury, at by emailing leo@newalphacdc.com, or you can go to our website, www.newalphacdc.com, or give us a call at 843-799-0740. And please give us a call. Give us some ideas. Give us some subjects, some issues that we can talk about.
And I'm Larry Smith, and you can reach me at the Community Times newspaper and DBS Communications. My email address is D as in David Smith, SMITH 7716 at AOL.com. You can reach me on the web at www.scvillage-voices.com. Also, you can call me at 843-667-1818, and we'll be happy to hear your concerns, your interests, and topics that we need to share with the rest of the community.
Okay, so until next week, this time, stay safe, stay blessed, and join us once again for the Leo and Larry show, where you get to know more and you can get to go more places in your life.
It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show. It's about what you know. It's about where you go. If you really want to know, it's the Leo and Larry show.